Hey YouTube, I am doing a GraphQL series with my favorite tools here. I'm using Prisma, Apollo Server, and Apollo Client, but starting off with just the Prisma tutorial, and later episodes, you're gonna see how I configure everything and then test it all. But to begin with, head over to the Prisma docs. It's an awesome query builder, and it replaces traditional ORMs. You can follow along on the video or just jump on the docs. Super fun and simple. First, you want to get Docker up and running on your machine. I've got Docker Desktop, easy to download. Log in, get it going. There it is on mine. Then you also want to install Prisma, and you want to do that globally. I've got it here. You could use Homebrew, or you could just do npm globally with the install. And then from that, you want to get a Docker Compose file in your repo. So I've got one set up with this Postgres configuration. And it's running on 4466 for the port. So jumping back over to the repo, you can see that I have Docker Compose file. Looks exactly that way, just copied it over. Simple repo. We got two dependencies, Apollo Server and the Prisma client library, and then just a start script. Just super simple package.json to get it up and running. Docker Compose, all you got to do is hit Docker Compose up-d in the detached mode to get it up and running. It's creating these two containers. Check them out by doing Docker PS. And they're up and running. Looks really clean and crisp. I had them running before, but it does take a little time to build. I also made this empty Prisma file folder, and let's jump into that. And the boilerplate for Prisma. Jump back on the docs. You're gonna want to do this little command, and it is going to create it in the folder. You're going to get two files. You're going to get this Prisma YAML pointing out the endpoint localhost 4466. I'm going to change that and just have it be like dev. And then I'm going to go ahead back into the docs because I'm going to want to generate all that query builder logic and plug it in right here. And it's going to give me this great output. Also, based upon the data model, it's going to look in the data model for what your model looks like and create all the query building logic for it. I'm going to pass a password with a string, and I'm going to change the name to being unique. All right. So double check, pointing at the right spaces. I want it going outside of that folder. And then Prisma deploy, see if it generates. And I have done it before, so nope, it made the generated folder, giving me this index file. This is basically the configuration to your endpoint. Got a little kitty here, wanted to say hello. And then let's look at the schema. This is all the logic that I'm going to be using in my Apollo server as the context. So we've got to create user mutation, gives back a user based upon the user create input. And then I've got some queries, user right there, user where unique input. That's going to take in an ID or a name. That's because I made the name unique. So jumping out of that generated folder, we could jump into the index file that I made earlier. Basically, this is the Apollo logic that's going to connect it to Prisma. So just a few type definitions. I made a simple user type and two other types of mutation and a query. Create user, when I'm creating a user, passing in two arguments, a name and a password, and then the response is going to be a user, and a query, current user with an ID, and we're going to get a user back. And you got to justify all that logic through a resolver, passing in 4 different arguments. The first is the parent, not needing to access that right now, but then we got the arguments and the context. I've destructured them this way, so I'm passing in the name and the password, and then I'm accessing Prisma. you'll see the basic configuration in the server setup here. So you're passing the type definitions, the resolvers, and the context. Prisma's right there, and listening on the port. Back with the Prisma that I just created, I'm going to go ahead and look at the GUI, and it should be totally empty. Nothing has been sent to it, but I've got a nice little database GUI looking for this one little query. And let's actually see if we can run some logic. I'm going to jump back into the root of the folder, root of the repo, and hit yarn start. Gets up and running in localhost 4000. Here's my GraphQL playground. And I created a mutation earlier of create user, basically based upon that resolver that I had shown you I built. Here I'm able to pass in variables, and I could have multiple different mutations and queries in one folder. So we got a name we're passing as an argument, password, they're associated to the mutation right here, and then we're going to return the name and the password. In my case, my nickname's JMac, and I've got a little kitty named Fox. So when I hit play, it's going to create it. Check the Prisma admin over here. There's JMac and Fox. And that's Prisma. That's just the touching the very edge of Prisma. There's so much more it can do, but I really do love this tool, and I hope you find it as useful as I have. Well, thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.